Hello, I'm Locke Meredith. I'd like to invite you to join me on the next Legal Lines. We have Judge Don Johnson. He's on the 19th Judicial District Court here in East Baton Rouge Parish. Judge Johnson is going to talk to us about how he ended up becoming a judge, how the Clark litigation, we dealt with sub-districts here in East Baton Rouge Parish and really the entire state, resulted in more black judges. He's also going to talk about and give very interesting perspective on the criminal system and why he sees so many black young men in his court and on drugs. That's on the next Legal Lines with Judge Don Johnson. Please join us. Welcome to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith, and I'm very pleased to have on the show Judge Don Johnson. He is a judge in the 19th Judicial District Court here in Baton Rouge. Judge, thanks again for being on.
It's a pleasure.
Just give the folks a little background on you, educational history, employment history, that kind of stuff, so they know where you're coming from.
Sure. I'm a graduate of Baton Rouge High School in 1972. Completed my Bachelor's of Science degree from Southern University. Mechanical engineering degree in 1982, I believe. 1977.
Okay.
Then I graduated from LSU Law School in 82. Worked under District Attorney O.C. Brown for a couple of years. I've been in private practice, and then I got elected to City Court in Baton Rouge. Went over to State Court, where I serve now. In terms of post-education, I've completed a Master's in Criminal Justice degree from Loyola. I did that a couple of years ago. I'm about to complete another Master's degree in Judicial Studies at the University of Nevada in Reno. And I'm also pursuing a PhD in Criminal Justice with the University of Southern Mississippi in Hattiesburg.
Wow. Okay, you got some history behind you. Let me ask you this. When you were a prosecuting DA, what kind of cases did you prosecute?
I initially started out with misdemeanor prosecution and then worked up to felony prosecution.
So involved in the whole gambit?
Correct.
All right, and then in private practice, what generally did you do?
I did all things.
Everything, huh?
Everything.
Yeah. We all did, huh?
Yes.
Okay. And then at City Court, generally handled kind of the gamut of cases, some criminal traffic type stuff and the civil stuff, but the quantity at issue generally below $20,000.
That's correct.
And then when you went to the district court, it's everything.
That's correct.
Now at the district court, as I understand it, initially plugged into the criminal
That's
docket.
right.
Tell the folks about that.
That was an interesting experience. I had defended it in those same courtrooms and prosecuted in those same courtrooms. So to go back to serve as a court judge in the same arena I had worked in was quite interesting. It's a different position. You're in the center of things. You're not an advocate for either side. You call the files and you make sure justice is achieved.
Now, what motivated you to get involved into the judiciary?
Initially, my follow-up came after the Clark litigation.
Tell the folks what that is. They probably don't know.
It is a case that changed the phenomenon of electing judges in the state of Louisiana. Historically, blacks could not get elected outside of Orleans Parish.
And the reason was because there was a black majority there.
That's correct.
Okay.
Outside of Orleans, that was race-based voting, and our parish was one of those parishes that voted based primarily on race. We were able to prove that in federal court as a consequence of the Clark litigation. And
that's Judge Janice Clark. She filed a lawsuit.
That is correct.
Okay.
Around 1987, I think, when it was filed. Eventually it went to the United States Supreme Court, and it prevailed on the merits of the lawsuit, which was eventually settled, which created what we have now.
Which is what?
We have a combination system of electing judges from minority and majority-raced sub-districts. In some sections of our state, we do not have that because we could not draw lines, district lines, which were compact as well as...
So this litigation affected the entire state?
Most of the state, that's correct. So what you find is historically we've moved from about 3 judges about 18 years ago, black judges in this state, to about 40 approximate judges now.
And the goal was and is, I guess, to have, a ratio of the population, white and black ratio?
A more balanced judiciary.
Same in the judiciary.
That's correct.
Okay.
Now, we've been operating under this system for approximately 17 years now. So the lines have not been redrawn in 17 years. Perhaps that needs to be revisited because if we're going to continue to operate in this vernacular where we're electing judges from sub-districts, eventually the sub-districts formulas won't work So that needs to be revisited at some point in time.
So the purpose of the formulas was to ensure that there was a majority of a black population in that district, and so that if they felt the black candidate was sufficiently qualified or more qualified, they would be elected.
That's correct.
And I guess we've come a long way with the election of Chip.
Substantially. In Baton Rouge, we've come tremendously. Last year, or was it this year, we elected the first black mayor. A couple of years ago, we elected the first black city constable. So we are, in terms of race relations, changing our phenomena. We're changing our face. We're changing our image. And I think that Baton Rouge is in a posture right now to lead the South. We know that Atlanta has primarily benefited from a lot of successes with races coming together and working together. But I think Baton Rouge, because of where we are on this river, because we've been the capital city, I think we're on the threshold of taking off to do something much greater than what we've done in the past. So I'm hopeful.
That's great news. Well, let's talk about your education and your history on the criminal bench and what you saw, because I just had Doug Morrow, who's a district attorney, and you know Doug, and we were talking about our circumstances and how crime is increasing and getting worse, and the system's just not working. There's limited resources, and I guess you're seeing the same thing.
I am. Before I came over, I contacted the warden at the prison office, and I got the statistics this year regarding the number of arrests and books at the parish prison. And I learned that at this date in time, this is August 20th or close to it, we have reached the same number of persons that were booked all of last year. So here we are 3 months or so, and yet we've reached the same booking rate of arrest.
Which is consistent. Doug just said that his prosecutor's caseload has increased 36%.
It has. So what's going on? What's happening? Why are we seemingly having an increase in crime when the national statistics seem to show that we're having a decrease? Perhaps we have better law enforcement. We're arresting more perpetrators than what we've historically arrested. I'm not sure if crime has increased. Maybe we're doing a better job of catching criminals.
Problem is we can't process them, can we?
We cannot. The system is overloaded. What I have talked about and discussed is, how about a new system? How about a system which perhaps considers, especially in the cases where we have drugs involved, that for users of drugs, for persons who are addicted, that we move to a new system, something between correctional system and probation, something which would institutionalize them for treatment purposes.
Now, why are you proposing that? I guess you've seen folks that you make them suffer the consequences, or you scare the heck out of them and say, if I see you in here again, I'm putting you in the slammer, and they show up again.
They do. And it's a phenomenon that when I first got to the criminal bench, I didn't understand. But I went out and got certification as a drug court judge at the National Drug Court Training Center. I went out and got the Judicial Studies pursuit of drug court standards. So I learned that the use of certain drugs are addiction. And if you're addicted, your rationality is imbalanced. So you're going to want this drug regardless of what I tell you to do or what your parents or family want you to do.
Don't care what the consequences are.
The consequences are not. You cannot frighten. Imagine that. I, as a judge, cannot frighten an individual into doing the right thing because the drug overpowers the will.
And you've got the threat of saying, I'm going to stick your hiney in jail.
That's correct.
And it doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
Let's talk about that on the next segment, then, how you propose dealing with that.
Very well.
This is Locke Meredith, Legal Lines, and Judge Don Johnson. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith, and again, pleased to have on the show Judge Don Johnson. He's on the 19th Judicial District Court here in East Baton Rouge Parish, and we're talking about criminals, and particularly at this point, drug offenders, and what he's seen, what his experience has been with those folks. Again, Judge, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you.
Let's talk about it. So saying I'm going to put you hiney in jail doesn't work.
Doesn't work.
So what do we do?
First of all, I would emphasize that we become reactionary to the extent that anyone who expresses something different than lock them up is somehow soft on crime.
Well, and let's make it clear too. Now, you were the drug judge.
That's correct.
Solely for a while.
2 years almost.
So you saw thousands of people.
I locked up many people.
Okay. And I just want the folks to have that perspective. You weren't timid about putting people in jail. You just saw it not working.
That's correct.
All right.
I had a substantial number of our citizens in my court, and I'm looking at these faces asking them, why are you here? Why are you here? You're committing crimes and you're using drugs and you know it's against the law. Well, the first impression, the first reaction for anyone getting on that assignment is lock them up as long as you can.
And that's what you did?
And I did that for a period of time. And I would venture to say that every judge who came on the drug court came with that philosophy. But everyone who left had a different philosophy.
Well, Judge Downing has been on here and was on national TV shows promoting alternative type of treatment.
Alternatives. And I'll tell you why we have to turn to some sort of alternatives. When everyone are in your community, you know someone directly, your brother, your sister, your aunt, your uncle, has a member of their family using drugs, going to prison, it's time to take another look at it. It's too system-wide. It's too culturally based in all of our neighborhoods. I would like to see us readily identify, at the time those persons that are arrested, the addicts, and prosecute them in a different manner by way of treatment. And that's what I'm proposing.
And you also noted, though, however, that if these were repeat offenders or it was violent crimes, the folks that we don't want on the streets, they don't get the benefit of this alternative path.
Exactly. We have to prioritize. We don't have the money anymore. We don't have the facilities. We don't have the resources. So looking at that fundamentally and truthfully, what do we do? Well,
and I don't mean to interrupt, but this is so consistent with what the DA just said, and that is, look, I have thousands of cases coming in, and I only have resources to maybe prosecute 25 or 30 or 40% of them. That means 60 or so percent of these cases we're not even prosecuting. And this is a way potentially to deal with the folks who the system's not even addressing.
And I agree with you. We should emphasize, let's deal with the violent offenders. Let's deal with the cases involving the drug pushers, the traffickers. Let's put them away. Those who are users, let's consider putting them in a correctional facility for treatment only and letting them out after a certain period that's recognized as a sufficient time to get them treated.
Now, how would that take place? I assume you have to have the legislature involved and you have to have the funding for it and all of that.
Correct.
How do you envision that?
Here's what I envision. Let's take one of our state correctional facilities. Let's take one of our state penitentiaries. Convert that to a treatment facility. Convert it to a treatment facility. It would take a legislative act. We could do it on a pilot concept and see how it works in one of our facilities. If it works, we can expand it. Let's see if we can save money. I believe we can save money because to house someone in a less than high profile or high risk environment is cheaper than it is
security.
House. It's
don't
less
need
security.
Okay.
You don't have all of that overhead. You don't have all that institutional requirements of law. Basically, you're housing people in dormitory settings, but they are housed. Something similar to our mental health facilities, where they cannot leave, they can be treated, and then come back to us. That's what I'm proposing.
And you said something interesting, and you said, based on your experience of all the crimes that were committed, 80% of them were drug-related, whether it was booze or hard drugs.
Substance usage is related to most of the crimes of the people that go to parish prison. The statistics show it. Every person who's arrested on a felony charge for drugs are tested if they're let out on bond. We test everybody, the court does. We give them a drug test, we know what they're using. I know when I was on the court, I looked at those statistics, and I saw how many of us are using these substances. And it's just astronomical that much usage is going on. So how about dealing with who's bringing this stuff to us? Let's focus on getting those individuals off the street and putting them away. And let's deal with the ones that really want to change. Those that don't want to change, we'll deal with them appropriately. But those that do want to redefine themselves, I think we need to go in that direction.
You also said there was another observation that you made that you think accounts for the huge increase in crime, and that is just the total breakdown of the family.
Yes.
Let's talk about that.
I see it every day because in the process of dealing with individuals in court, I get the opportunity to question them. I get the opportunity to learn what's going on at home. I get the opportunity to learn who lives with them at home. I get the opportunity to learn something about them individually, their educational career. For example, 80 to 90% of the males that were in drug court when I was there, number one, were black males.
Which is statistically borne out.
Exactly. Why are they there? What's going on in the black community, or that considers a system where 80% of their young men are going to wind up in some sort of criminal court or on probation or on parole or in a jail.
Something's not working.
Something's not working. So, black community, what's going on in your neighborhood primarily, since you're the cause of the statistics, what's going on there? Now, in terms of the larger community, it's similar, but what I've seen is a substantial different drug usage in the black community versus non-black communities.
So why do you think that's going on?
The marketeers of these drugs know which drugs to market where. In rural East Baton Rouge Parish, MDMA is the primary drug culture of use.
I don't even know what that is. What is that?
It's, well, the technical term, I can't even pronounce it myself, but it's one of the regulated narcotic drugs that we have.
Okay.
Methamphetamines, it's the drug of choice, rural parish America.
Which would be what, more white folks?
Exactly.
Okay.
That's correct.
And then on the inner city or the black community?
It's more cocaine.
Really?
That's a fact. Everyone who prosecutes, who defends, knows that. Now, there's some crossover, but by and large, that's the data.
So what is the reason for this huge percentage of young black males doing drugs? I mean, they're obviously trying to numb themselves, or I don't know. You tell me.
Perhaps, and I live in the black community. I don't live in an integrated community by and large because of where I live. And what I see is a lot of young black males who have not graduated from high school. And again, I'll get back to this issue of why they're there. But 80 to 85% of the young black males in court, criminal court, did not graduate from high school. So what is happening in the black home that has not achieved a level of at least a high school education? The parental responsibility, the degree of expectation, I don't think is there. I don't think it's there because either us as black males are not providing it, or we're allowing others to provide it for us. Right, and that's just not achieving.
Let's pick this up and continue on the next segment. This is Locke Meredith in Legal Lines with Judge Don Johnson. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith. Again, pleased to have on the show Judge Don Johnson with the 19th Judicial District Court. We're talking about why does 80 to 85% of the young black men that show up in his court do drugs? Why are they there? Judge, you were talking about the breakdown of the family and all that entails.
It entails a lot. I really would emphasize that traditional black organizations, particularly the black church, has the most ability to resolve issues that are perhaps local to the black community or so close to the black community. We have a system right now where if you have a one household family, one individual earning the wage, and they've got children, that individual leaves in the morning. Children goes to the public school system primarily. As you know, the public school system is...
Who can afford these private schools? It's unbelievable.
98% black. So what's happening is the black children are primarily being educated in the public school system. They get out of school 2:30, 2:15, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. They come home, the parents are not there. A lot of the parents are not there. They're working. So who's providing the aftercare?
MTV.
Who's providing the supervision? Who's providing the continuity? Who's providing the afternoon study schedule for that individual? The children come home and they're basically there themselves in the community. You see them there walking. You see them setting out. Very little wholesome training and standard goes on. By the time the parent gets home, tired.
Yeah.
Tempers are short. And it's time to prepare for another day.
It's so interesting because you look at the we're talking about white and black. 50% of the households now have one parent.
Exactly.
And the black statistics are even higher than that.
It is.
Folks have to bust their hindies to pay the bills because things keep going up. And the kids are raising themselves with a TV staring at them, or kind of a herd mentality, I call it, where all the guys just get together and they watch TV and figure out what the standard for a male is, and that becomes the standard.
It's
for everybody.
It's become uniform, and it's beyond the black community. But
yeah.
I really would think that, I really do think that if we somehow can ratify a new agenda for public education, that will provide a basis. Now, I'm not saying that public educators should take the responsibility of raising our children.
It's a parent's responsibility.
Exactly.
Bottom line.
Exactly.
Problem is, system really doesn't give them a lot of opportunity to do it right now.
Very little window for you to educate and participate in your child's career.
So what do we do?
I would suggest that, and I've considered some alternatives. especially with public schools. Let's expect our parents to do more in our public schools. Let's not have a system where we just send our child to a school and expect the school to educate that child and send that child home. When that child has disciplinary problems, when that child has mental health problems, when that child perhaps is not getting a good night's sleep or not eating properly. The public school system is not set up to achieve that.
Wasn't meant to be.
It's not meant to be. So if we look at that and consider something, I thought about for all non-performing school students, how about year-round requirement? How about everyone who's not performing on standards mandated that you have year-round to get you to a level of average performance? How about weekends or Saturday opportunities? How about educating our parents so that they can educate our children? Bottom line, a lot of our parents are not understanding the materials that the children are taught in the first place. So they can't even assist them. So perhaps in those arenas, we could identify the parents who are lacking the tools to train and require them to show up on school days also to receive some supplemental training, to learn what the course objectives are for the week. For example, I would venture to say that most parents don't even have the lesson objective for that week's lesson for that child. So how can they assist them with homework or assist them with
Even if they know how to do it.
Even if they don't know how to do it.
And if they don't know how to do it, is there a resource available to them to help?
They're not privy to the lesson plan.
Now, have you been involved in the juvenile court system at all?
Not directly. I only get involved when they come from juvenile court into criminal court, but they migrate. A substantial migration occurs. You can track their records and see that they're moving from one phenomenon, one level to another, from juvenile correctional to adult correctional.
And I can see how we're talking about, I guess, systemically as a society trying to address this the way you've talked about. You're empowered through the court, your position as a judge, to deal with it. What are the ages that this suggestion would be dealt with? I mean, you see in what ages in your court?
It has to occur early on. By and large, you cannot change many minds once they reach the adult level.
So this isn't going to work for the guys that you're seeing?
Primarily. We have to start at a lower level. Because it's too ingrained, it's too systematic, and when there's no fear of consequences to action, then you can't frighten anyone. So what are your alternatives? Basically, you're left with just dealing with someone, you're locking them up or trying to turn someone around. I'll use this term, lock. We use the term in court about rehabilitation. The problem is that the rehabilitating did not occur in the first place. So how do you rehab a tire, retread a tire that wasn't treaded in the beginning? So that's the phenomenon we're faced with.
So you really don't have anything to work with, unfortunately, by the time the folks get to you?
Very little. Very little. And most of us are not going to get elected as judges if we don't approach this hard crime type of approach in running and getting elected. We have
because people are scared.
Most people are scared. So the fear factor governs their voting decision. And if you're not perceived to be a person who's tough and hard on crime, the voters are not going to put you in office in the first place because they want to be free from fear and they want to be free from crime. Prevention, directed policing is a way to go. Let's stop crime from happening versus locking everybody up after it happens. I would much prefer we prevent it.
Two-prong attack. Get them in the beginning.
Exactly.
It's interesting, too, though, because right now, as I understand it, these folks, a good number of whom are just addicted, not doing violent or horrible crimes, or a lot of times being thrown in with those kinds of people, and they're shifting from an addiction scenario and circumstance to crime.
Yes.
They're kind of it's almost like we're exacerbating the problem.
We're adding to it. We're aiding it at some extent because, first of all, they're violating the law by going to get the substance. They either have to buy it or someone has to give it to them. So that's a violation. However, we compound that violation when we criminalize the addicts and then the opportunity for them to come back to society. As you well know, Locke, most of our citizens who go to penitentiary and jails come back to us. They're coming back. Why not have them coming back to an environment that helps them to succeed? Most of them come back to an environment without a job, with an opportunity to get a decent job. So they find themselves in a malaise. And they're asking themselves, well, I've come out of the penitentiary. I've served 5 years, 2 years, 3 years. What am I going to do? Can I get a job? Can I get a decent wage job? If I can't, I'm going to go find something to do that I
Which
can
I
get some
probably
money.
learned in prison.
Exactly. and they're picking it up. They become better at what they do. Here's what's happening. They're going to succeed at something. They're going to succeed at being either a good civic-minded individual, or they're going to succeed at being a good criminal. But they're going to succeed. Everybody generally wants to be good at something. And if you can't find something to be good at, they're looking for something to be bad at. But they're going to find it.
Judge, thank you so much for being on the
Pleasure.
show. Good luck to you in there. I know it's a tough road
Thank you.
to hoe. It's Locke Meredith, the Legal Lines, and Judge Don Johnson. Thank you for being with us. We'll see you next time.